I'm a fan. I'm a rodeo fan, and I'm a bull riding fan. I'm a Western events fan. I love it. I love every bit of it. And the cool part for me as an announcer is I get to promote the people I enjoy watching. And I get to hopefully do them justice at their events, and I get to bring an entertainment value. And I think for me, when it came to it, I figured out a way to be a part of the Western way of life, to be a part of this life that I had dreamed of being in. And I was able to do it through the microphone.
All right, so welcome to the Carla Rand Show. And the Carla Rand Show is where we talk about physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, different kinds of health. And so today I've got Dom St Amand with me. And Dom it stands for Dominic, because I remember when I said your name first, you're like, everyone says Don with an N, but it's actually Dom. So, yeah. And I met you at the Rank Mini Pony event and also a bullfighting event. And you were doing the rodeo announcing. And I want to talk a little bit about that. But not only are you a rodeo announcer, you also buy grain. You also, and you sell it, right? You buy grain and you resell? Or
a little bit. I don't sell much, but okay. There's a lot of buying. It's more buying. You grow it, I'll come buy it from you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got all this grain. And then you also, like, you ref hockey, right? You're actually a director. You're doing some kind of directing with the hockey?
I'm a director for the Northeast and for Hockey Alberta for the officials. And then I'm also do officiate, yes. Yeah,
okay.
A lot of hockey, a lot of busy times in our house.
I bet. Yeah. And we were talking just like off camera here about grain, right? How the grain prices, the hay prices, like a lot of farmers are kind of in dire straits. And you were talking about how there's a lot of emotions, right? Like a lot of the farmers, they're very emotional right now. Some of them might be losing their herds for, or they can't afford to feed their animals, but they can't get them to the auction because it's glutted. And so there's a lot of people that are really stressed. So you're having to talk to them about grain, but also help them make a good decision so they're not making a really emotional decision, right?
That's correct. And it's crazy right now. So the one advantage I have is to lean on the reffing side of it. A lot of it is diffusing situations for me. It's keeping people on the level because, it's a high emotional thing when it comes to hockey. In Canada, we eat, breathe, sleep. It's a religion here.
Yeah.
So with producers, I have that ability now to utilize I'm able to help them work through those emotions to make sure they're not making a rash decision. We're able to talk through it. We're able to make sure that they're understanding where they're at and then how we can help them kind of make those decisions a little bit easier and just try and put them at ease. I mean, we don't want anybody doing anything crazy. So it's been very trying. Even on myself, I find on Friday afternoon, I'm usually kind of burnt out, but it's good because you get the weekend to, de-stress and find some solace.
Yeah, well, it was funny because when I was at that event with you, and I wanted to talk about this diffusing situation because I was standing beside you and I was doing the timekeeping and a couple other things. And there you were basically like the DJ, the announcer, the scorekeeper, like you were doing it all. And you had your mixing board and your starting thing. And I was just, this is amazing. He's got the speakers, he's got everything. And I'm like, how is he doing this? And you got your little, pencil, you're jotting things down. And I'm like, whoa, like this is a lot. And I'm just sitting there with like a little whistle, and the timer. And I'm, I just have a little bit to do. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then there was somebody there that was like, had maybe a few too many drinks. And they came over and they spilt something, maybe some alcohol on your mixing board. And he was kind of like getting in your space. And I was getting a little frustrated. I'm like, get this guy out of here, right? But you were just like, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Like you were just like, talk about diffusing the situation, Dom. And I won't forget that. I was like, man, this guy is like, wow, like so good at that because I was already getting kind of fired up, right? So I noticed that about you. So that must be a skill or a gift of yours. And maybe just in certain situations that you've been in, you've developed that gift, but that's such a good skill to have.
I think at a very young age, I started reffing hockey where, I'd have parents who would be, their 8-year-old or 9-year-old kid is playing and they are losing their marbles. And when I first had this happen, my reaction was temper to go back. And I was a short fuse too. So I just throw them out. I'm like, get out of here. I don't need that. And what I learned over the years and some help from my parents and kind of how to understand and communicate, I was able to figure out a way to talk people through these problems, which then led me on in life to where I'm at. And actually, it's funny on the drinking side of thing. I was a bouncer in Olds for a very brief amount of time, a couple of years, maybe 3 at the Texas Mickey was like the mainstay in Olds. and she had invited me to come bounce there. It was Jen at the time. And yeah, actually, truth be told, that's where I learned a lot of the drunk diffusing, because drunk people are truly just very barbaric emotion out at you all the time. They have no control. So I figured instead of me getting at their level, I'll try and get them, comfortable at their level, and then we'll shift them out. But yes, that gentleman was very full. The board is okay, just for the record. Nobody was hurt, and I think he enjoyed his evening. So
Right.
might have a headache the next day, but that's his problem. So
yeah, I know, because he knocked, I think, one of your speakers down and everything, and I was like,
it's a wreck.
Yeah, it was a wreck, and I was like, oh, so, and you're trying to announce and you're trying to keep things going. So, anyways, and I could see that too. Like, so many, they talk about like hockey moms or hockey dads, right? Like hockey families, how they just get like so at each other. So I can see, and of course, like the bouncing, like how that all kind of brought you to that. But anyways, we've kind of talked about that. I wanted to talk about that, but let's kind of talk more about you, like kind of who you are and what's kind of your message to the world. What have you kind of learned? I know, like when you grew up, like tell us, like where did you grow up first, Dom?
So I grew up in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. It's basically the gateway to the north. We got some of the most beautiful lakes. It's a very diverse community, and I had a great upbringing. My parents blessed me with a lot of great opportunities. So obviously, we talked on hockey. That was, my dad played junior hockey. He reffed, junior hockey. So there was no doubt about it. I was going to get involved in the hockey. My grandparents were the same. It was just kind of the way it was. So I grew up in Saskatchewan, had this love for sports, love for everything. And truth be told, in growing up, I would have been 18 when I got on board my first horse. That's when I fell in love with the Western way of life. I had always had this love for the Western way of things were going, and my grandfather farmed. So as a child, I would kind of, I did everything. And my message, truthfully, is just say yes to opportunities. Like, don't be fearful of opportunity. And as a kid, I would just say yes to everything. I'd get invited to different things, and I would just do it. And I was always, if somebody who might not have been the most popular kid invited me to something, I was going. I didn't care. I was just, let's have some fun. Let's go do it. So that attitude helped me a lot through my youth, because I had said yes to a lot of things, and it led me down some great paths and some great life experiences. So growing up in Prince Albert, did the hockey thing, reffed hockey, played ball, and then I found a love for football. It would have been my grade 9 year. We finally kind of got a little taste of football. And at that point in time, I made this decision in my mind. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a pro football player. I want to do this. I'm going to eat, breathe, sleep it. So at that point now, I'm going and getting workouts in, and I followed this path deep. And I played my high school football. I faced a little bit of adversity with some, bad knee injuries in my high school years, kind of back to back. I had torn my knee, so it was not ideal. But as I got to grade 12, a decision was being made. Like, what am I going to do? What's the next step? And I had it in my mind already at 15. I was going to play football somewhere. So I had gone to Saskatoon. I had a really rough camp, and I had this chip on my shoulder that I should have been there. And I ended up getting cut at their spring camp. So I'm like, man, football dream, is it over? And a couple of days later, my dad had talked with the coach, Paul Orizietti, out in Victoria. And next thing you know, I'm going to Victoria, and I chose that path. So I said yes right away to the opportunity, because, who doesn't want to go to Victoria? If you're going to play football, play in Canada's Hawaii, right? So I jumped all over it, went out there, had the two best years of life experience that you could get at 18 and 19 years old. I'm living the life out there, enjoying all parts of the island life. And I would face adversity again with tearing my knee and having to make a conscious decision. Do I continue down this path? Because let's be real, I'm 5'10". I'm 200 pounds. Am I going to play pro football? The likelihood, the opportunity, yes, I have the desire, but I've got some very big odds against me. So I made the decision to go back home and kind of regroup. And I was kind of fell in this depressive state, but I had leaned back on this horse thing that I had kind of got involved with. My buddy's stepmom, Vanessa Ethier, led me down this path. She said, hey, why don't you come ride a horse? And I got on it. And actually my coaches in Victoria said, look, you got to cut that out. Like, you can't get hurt. We need you to come back. You got to cut the horse stuff out. And there was some colorful language come from my coach, but I said, okay, deal. And when I got back, that's where my love had fell into. So this kid who grew up in town with hockey and the sports is now falling in love with the Western way of life. And I'm riding horses and training and feeding and helping. And that's when it led me down to another path where I just said yes. She said, hey, you interested to go to Olds College, maybe taking the breeding program? I said, yeah, let's do it. So I jumped all over it. Now I'm in Olds, Alberta at 19, and I just kind of fell into this, what would become my life as we know it now, which is very involved in in our very deep rooted Western Canadian lifestyle of rodeo and farming and ranching. So
And it's so
yeah,
cool because, like, my husband loves to rope and he loves to ride and stuff. But growing up, he never had horses. So, like, he would go to the neighbors the odd time and ride, but, like, never really got to do that. So, it wasn't really until he was in his 20s that he really started to actually ride much. But I think it doesn't matter what age you are. If you really love something, you'll figure it out, you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, what resonated well with me, there was a professional roper, Patrick Smith, and I had obviously started kind of roping when I got to college. I didn't pick up a rope till then, really. And I had some great people help me out. Like I had some of the best people. The Krugers were huge. The Kellys, everybody's getting me mounts, and I was getting on horses, and I'm figuring out how to ride still properly so I can do it. And then throwing a rope in the mix, it was like, this is the craziest thing in the world. I'm going as fast as I can down an arena. I'm trying to swing a loop and I'm trying to get it on an animal, and I'm going to dally up and turn. Like, it was a lot of moving parts. But Patrick Smith didn't start riding and roping till 19. And he would go on to become a world champion team roper. So for me, that was like, hey, look at this inspiration. This guy's a legend.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, it's not a he can do it, I can do it scenario, but it's like, hey, if he has that kind of opportunity, I can't be, rejecting myself for this. So I dedicated myself to that. And I found that, I wasn't the greatest roper, which obviously led me to the microphone, but I found a lot of fun in it, and I practice it all the time. And I truly I fell in love with doing it. And it's crazy because you're right. You can't say no to yourself because of an age thing. Like, I mean, people can start things well into their late years of their life and find new loves and passions. And that's what this was for me. I found some solace in riding horses, and it gave me the opportunity to get out of that, kind of a poor mental state that football's gone, my life's over, into a, hey, this is a great new opportunity, and it's a change up that I needed. And that kind of led me down that path of, where I'm at today. So
what
pretty
what
cool
rodeo?
stuff.
Yeah, what rodeo events have you done then? So you've done team roping, or was that calf
I
roping?
team roped.
Team rope?
I team roped and calf roped, and there was a brief point in time when this was just before I went back to Victoria. This is what they really got mad at. I chose that I was going to be a bareback rider, and the thought process that went through my mind was, hey, you just got to hang on, right? And definitely wrong in that sentiment. It's a lot, and I was this, just turned 19. I know I got to go back to football, but I thought I'll try it out. So I got into this school down in Wood Mountain. Now, the cool part for me is my family's homesteaded farm is about 30 miles down the road. So I was like, cool, I'm going to Wood Mountain, get to go back to where the roots are here. Let's try it out. And great school, like fantastic people. I rode the bucking machine and thought, okay, let's try it. And I got on some horses, and it was unreal. We had some of the greatest coaches, and I'll take it to the grave, but Clayton Hines and Jonathan Comito were there, and they said, man, this kid's got great markouts, because my football legs were so strong. I could get a hold, but I looked like a piece of plywood riding on top of this horse. Like, I just bounced around and I'd fall off. And I wouldn't say it wasn't for me. I quite enjoyed it, but at the build I was at, I didn't feel I didn't feel that it was the sport for me. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's maybe put a bow on this for now. We'll put a pin in it. We'll come back to that later. So I did try bareback. I think I had a career record. I think I've rode for maybe like 4 seconds on a combined 9 horses. So I'm not taking it as I was a bareback rider. I tried it. That was, my cup of tea, and I moved on. But yes, the roping is what I mainly did. I team roped predominantly. And then in my last couple of years in college, which if you ask many of my friends, I was there for far too long to not be a doctor, but I would try tie down roping, and I fell in love with that. It was a very cool event. I was more of a rodeo clown when I would do it. So I did leave it, but I do love both roping sports that I did. It was lots of fun.
Yeah. So then how did you get into announcing? There you are, you're doing team roping, and boom, all of a sudden you've got a microphone and you're going to all these events and you're being the rodeo announcer. How did that happen?
Well, it actually probably goes back to when I was a kid. I found I could impersonate people in some instances. And when I was in college, I'd impersonated, the Water Boy or like Austin Powers movies, which I'd fallen in love with, and I could do, like I would go into that. And what I had found was I could do a very poor impersonation of Bob Tallman. So We were in a
And Bob
dorm room
Tallman
one
is a
night.
rodeo announcer, for those of you who don't
He
know.
he's
Yeah.
he's to
So,
summarize it, he is like he's the guy, right? He's got that voice. If you've watched, listened, heard of the Calgary Stampede, you can't forget his booming voice and the way he does it. He's been on CBC a few times. Like he is the guy. You Google him, you'll find Bob Tillman. You'll understand. And I mean, I think everybody's tried the Bob Tillman impersonation, but he had this way of announcing, and I figured out how to kind of talk like him. And I I was in a dorm room enjoying some adult beverages with some friends prior to the bar, and I was kind of like the dancing bear. They were like, oh, Dom does impersonations, so just Dom, do you for 20 minutes, then we'll go to the bar. And they led me into you should do your Bob Tallman impersonation. So it's 2011 in the fall, and I'm just new to college, and whatever, I would have been 20 years old, and I decided that I would do this impersonation, and I did not know where it would lead me to today. But my friends who were on the rodeo team were like, Dom, you need to do that for us. Like, I don't know why you don't try announcing. And I had this very much Southern drawl because obviously I'm impersonating and I was trying to figure that out. So it led me to the microphone. The college rodeo team, Patrick Cassidy, Wayne Powell, Greg Hoare, those guys were like, okay, we'll try you out. And the deal for them was it was free at this point in time, right? Because they don't have to pay somebody. They're like, we got this free guy. He's going to do it. And I just grabbed the mic and I kind of worked through it. And Melissa Burton, our rodeo president, and she comes to me after the first event. She says, Dom, I'll tell you what, like, I'm so happy you're announcing, but you got to lose the Southern drawl. Like, you were not Texas. And I love constructive criticism. So I like when people come and tell me things because then I can work on it, right, for the better. So I just decided it's time. I got to try and figure out who I am and how I speak and how I can utilize my voice. And maybe I do have this ability. So that's kind of what started it. And once I had figured out how to talk like myself and be myself on the microphone, I found comfort, and I found I ended up, people are somehow hiring me. So it kind of became a thing. I just, much to the same piece of my message, I just jumped on every opportunity. And the first real big break I had was the Mills family. If you look them up, Doug Mills and his entire family, all their kids are horse trainers, and we've become, lifelong friends now. They were having a trainer challenge that was at Northlands during the CFR. So probably going to be the biggest crowd I'm going to talk in front of. But hey, I really had no inhibitions. I don't need the booze to move me. I can just do this. So I rolled in really late. It was poor icy conditions on the road. I barely get there. I locked my keys in my truck. Like, I'm putting a tie on. We're 10 minutes to showtime. And I honestly thought I was going to get fired before I got in there. And Doug I can just see him sweating. Like, what are we doing? Like, we put our trust in a 21-year-old kid to make this happen. And I was like, you know what? I just took a breath and I looked at Doug. I said, write down what you want me to start with, and we'll just roll with it. And there's probably 1,000 to, maybe 1,400 people in this building in Hall D. Like, it's pretty full. And this was the culmination of their entire week. This was the finale, the big to-do. They've got all the kids competing against one another. So then I get in there and Doug passes me this full scap, and I just grabbed the mic and I looked at Doug and in my smart ass ways went, Doug, are you ready? And he looked at me like, come on, man. And I grabbed the mic and I just went to it, ladies and gentlemen, and rolled into what would be the next hour. And that, from that point, the reception I got had given me that inkling that I should probably be doing this. So that's kind of where it really started. So 2011, I got my start, but 2012, that fall or that November at Northlands, that's when I knew, maybe I have something here. Maybe.
Yeah. That's so cool. And something you said too is like how you had to find your own voice, because I think when we first start something, I know with me as a fitness coach, at first I was basically just replicating the lady that I learned under, sort of my mentor. I just kind of did her style. I talked the way she did. And then I had to eventually get to the point where I had to kind of find my own voice, my own style. And I think everybody has to do that in their life. Even when even when we're thinking about a personality, right? Like, what is your personality? Who are you? What are you like? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Or like all these things, right? And I feel like everybody kind of has to find that. And sometimes we find that maybe earlier, but sometimes that can shift and change too. So I just think it's interesting, like that you mentioned that. And I think no matter what we're doing in life, we have to kind of find our own style, our way of doing it, whether that's parenting, whether that's like some sort of business that you have, rodeo announcing, like there's so many ways that we can do that. And I think initially it is good to model somebody, but you got to get to that point where now you're you're doing it your way. You have your own unique style, you know? So
100%.
what do you like about rodeo announcing specifically?
You know what? For me, if you ask anybody, I like to talk. One, um, I'm a fan. I'm a rodeo fan, and I'm a bull riding fan. I'm a Western events fan. I love it. I love every bit of it. And the cool part for me as an announcer is I get to promote the people I enjoy watching, and I get to hopefully do them justice at their events, and I get to bring an entertainment value. And I think for me, when it came to it, I figured out a way to be a part of the Western way of life, to be a part of this life that I had dreamed of being in. And I was able to do it through the microphone, essentially. And I've really found an enjoyment for it. And I've also found a way to kind of turn it into a bit of a career. And that's where now, when you can turn your passion or what would be a hobby into something that you can do for work, I mean, I almost think you make it there. You know what I mean? Like, and when people make the joke, like I'm living the dream, there's no cooler feeling than, aside from the birth of my daughter and the marriage to my wife, but there's no cooler feeling than rolling into an event on a Friday and you go into that performance and you got a fresh group of faces with you and a whole bunch of rodeo fans that are there with you to enjoy. And you get to bring them the information. You get to try and bring some energy. And that for me that's kind of where it sits. That's where I've truly found the desire to do this. It's just been a kind of a passion to turn into a fan and be able to bring that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. It might be a little bit hard to answer, but what do you think what is it about you, Dom, that makes you maybe different than others? Like, what makes you stand out? Why would somebody want to go to Dom as opposed to, anybody else? Like, is there something, like, have you discovered kind of what is that thing about you that kind of gifting that you have that you can offer that's unique?
Well, you know what? It's funny. I'm gonna use Brett's analogy. So Brett Gardner and I have become friends over the years, and a lot of attribution to Dustin Edwards as well, and his help to my career. And I mean, one of my closest friends who's led me to this too. He's brought me a lot of events. But something Brett said is we all kind of do the same job, right? We bring the same situation, but we happen to have. I mean, if you think of Brett Gardner, the voice of. I mean, I'm pretty sure if he went south to the PRCA. I mean, he would do some serious damage, like NFR quality. And he's going to hate me bragging on him like that. Maybe he won't.
Well, I had him on my podcast. I think you know that.
Yes.
So you guys go check it. I can't remember what episode it is, but if you want to hear Brett Gardner, you can go check that out too. But
yeah. So, but I mean, like the thing is, we're going to bring the same situation of how we work with a crowd but the difference, I don't know. I don't know what my X factor is. Cause I think the X factor that I try to bring is I try to bring a realness, and I try to bring an entertainment value for all ages. And I think we all try to do that, but I don't, you know what, it's tough, Carla, because I don't know what my X factor is.
Yeah.
As long as people are entertained and as long as they want to come back and they've enjoyed what I've been able to give them, and the committees are, and a big thing for me is when I work for a committee and they come back to you and say, hey, we want to bring you back. That makes me feel like I've done my job. And not to dance around your question, but it's tough because I don't know what my factor is. Maybe I don't know. I'm sure someday I'm going to sit back, look on my life and be like, okay, you know what? I know how to answer this 25 years from now, and I'll shoot you a message.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, I truly don't know what I bring, that it would be my X factor. I know that I try to bring entertainment and energy, and I try to bring as much knowledge to the fans as I can, some real-time stories, and bring in some hardcore information of like, hey, this cowboy here, his dad was a longtime champion or was a champion bull rider of Canada, or, maybe he was a tie-down roper and won the LRA at some point in time, and bringing those information pieces and bringing the information of what this competitor's done themselves. But what separates me from others, I couldn't tell you that.
I happen to be very good at that. So I'm going to tell you what I see. Okay,
sure.
Dom? So when I first met you, you looked me in the eye, you shook my hand, and you right away said something that I think it was like, an interview that I had done, a podcast interview, and you kind of congratulated on me you congratulated me about that, and you encouraged me. Right off the bat. And I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. And you're like, and I noticed that you did that with a lot of people. You looked them in the eye and you had a way of putting people at ease, right? Like even when we started this podcast interview, I like my head wasn't quite in the same space. We had to kind of restart it. But you're like, oh, we'll just roll with it. Like you have a way, and same with like diffusing a situation. You have a way of just like putting people at ease. So when I spent that time with you up on the platform and I was kind of helping out, by the end of it, I was like, Dom's my buddy. Like, he's just like, I feel so comfortable here. You know, you didn't make me do anything that was too crazy. You're just like, oh no, like, I've got this. Like, we're good, you know, just like totally relaxed. And I think that is a gift of yours. So when you come in there, like, your social skills are amazing. So when I just saw the way you're interacting with people. So you encourage people, you look them in the eye, you make them feel important and special, and you put them at ease. And I mean, that is incredible. So that's something that I've seen, Dom, and there's probably a lot of other things, but that's what I've seen. I think you just have a presence about you that you just put people at ease and make them feel good about themselves.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of that attributes back to the way I was brought up. You know, my parents had always said, you know, you've got to be able to communicate with people. And I've always had this gift. And it's funny, led back to, it's funny how announcing found me, I think, because I was a talkative kid. Like you could not shut me up. So it's funny because for me, I found that I had to, you know, with life, if you couldn't communicate, you're kind of, you know, I knew I wasn't a brainiac in school. So I learned through the school of hard knocks with my dad and being a business owner and working with people, and my mom being an educator and how she has to work with people and be able to understand where they're coming from, and my grandparents and the friends that I have. I mean, I've been able to figure out ways, and don't get me wrong, there's times where I feel uneasy, but I've always found that if I'm uneasy and the other people are uneasy, well, now we're all in trouble because the ship might go down. Yeah. So I've been able to work through some of those faults of mine and try and find, and I very much appreciate you saying that. I don't, you know, it's hard to look at yourself. I'm very critical on myself of how I present myself to people, and maybe how I'll do an event. You know, I'll do an event, think, man, I could have been so better here, or this, you know, I just didn't really like how I did this event, or it talked about this kid. It just didn't feel right. My communication skills, I think, have evolved based on my surroundings. And I attribute a lot of where I'm at from the reffing and working with people in the industry I'm at today with farming and working as an announcer. I mean, you have to work on communication. And I got to lead back to when I first kind of got onto this, and when I made the choice in 2015, that I was end of 2015, I said, I'm going to make announcing my thing. I'm going to kind of back off on the roping. Dustin Edwards had taken me under his wing, and he had kind of guided me on a presence of how you should be. And, you know, Brett has even brought into that, like how you got to be with the people. Cause a lot of times as the announcer, when you get to some of these events, a lot of the people are going to look to you, especially at these semi-professional and these amateur rodeos. They might look to you to kind of be the production guy. So if I'm losing my mind, then it's not going to be good. But I, you know, and it was cool to meet you because you had interviewed Travis James, who's a mutual friend of ours, and, you know, a close friend of mine, and huge supporter of when he had come on your podcast originally. And then obviously Brett Gardner coming on here and talking about the mental health. I thought, you know what a cool way to do this. And I think it's so important that we're getting these communication pieces out there. So for me, communication has always been number one. And I appreciate you saying that, because I try to make sure everybody's comfortable. And it was your first time, I think, timing. And you're kind of looking at me for some advice. Like, I'm like, it's all good.
But you had enough stuff going on. I'm like, I better handle this. Like, I got to figure this out, you know? But no, it was really good. And like, what would you say, Dom, is kind of like, you've talked about saying yes to opportunities. That's part of your message to the world. Is there anything else that you would say that's just like, you know what, this is something I've learned. This is something that's been, you know, added value to me. I know for me, saying yes to things is so important, especially when you're starting out. Just say yes to everything, because you don't really know what you're good at. You don't really know. It takes time and it takes experience. Then it gets to the point where, like me, and now I say no to a lot of things, and you probably have to as well, because otherwise you get overwhelmed. You can't say yes to everything for the rest of your life, but you need to say yes to a lot of different things initially. Beyond that, what else is there another kind of message or anything you want to add to that, Dom?
Yeah, I will add to the yes thing. I'm not Jim Carrey and yes man. Like, it doesn't mean go out. If somebody says, hey, let's go rob a bank today, I'm not saying, hey, go do that. It's going to be great for you. It'll work out. Right. It'll get you a free ride to the jail. But I think the other message is be honest with yourself and be true to yourself and have some reflection. because that's what I've been able to utilize. You know, I've said yes to these opportunities. It's gotten me to a very cool place and some great I've met some great people along the way. I've gone on some cool adventures. But taking the time for your mental health side of things, and not to completely pivot here, but sometimes when we overwhelm ourselves, we get into a position of a spiral, and where we don't, you know, we kind of get into this down spin where we're not sure where to turn or where to act or what to do. And what I've been able to figure out, and this is kind of part of my no inhibitions thing, is finding the way to help yourself. And maybe that's turning to people, and maybe that's finding someone to react with and interact with to help you. I mean, I've been able to have the gift of, if I have a problem, instead of burying it deep inside, I can kind of turn to somebody. And it's very tough for people to find help. It's very tough to ask for help. I remember, think back to my 19-year-old self when I'm going through my depressive state after my football career's over. I didn't bother asking anybody for help. I just went, did my thing, and I kind of just drowned myself out in whatever I could find. And honestly, it was between eating and partying and just, you know, not living my best life. I found some solace, obviously, in asking for more help on the horse thing, and from my buddy's mom. And when Vanessa had, you know, extended the hand to kind of help me out with that, I found solace in finding that. So it was asking the questions. And then when I get involved with this stuff, much like the rodeo announcing, I had no problem. I was not nervous to go ahead and call Dustin and go, look, man, you know, I know we've kind of become buddies here. Would you give me some help? And asking those people for help, because it's tough for us, like I said, and I don't mean to circle on this, but it's very tough for a person to go, hey, you know, can you help me? Like, it's those, for some reason, those words are the hardest to get out of your mouth. It's almost like when you're trying to scream after you got scared in a hallway because you thought you saw a ghost, you can't get it out. You're like, oh my God. That's the same feeling I find when we try to find help. So much to my opportunity, I've been able to do this in all aspects of my life. You know, I've got, you know, maybe my daughter's, you know, having a fit. Well, I'll turn to maybe my mother and father-in-law because they're around here, and I'll call my parents and be like, hey, you know, what would you do? Or, you know, call a friend who might have a kid. And that's, you know, I ask for the help. And same thing, if I've got a problem at work, I don't have an answer. Well, I'll go to either my manager or a fellow colleague or whatever that looks like. And same thing with announcing. The only time I was nervous to call somebody, because I was a little starstruck a little bit, was Brett. I was nervous to call Brett. And same thing, which you've kind of alluded to the way I am, Brett has always made me feel comfortable, much like Dustin. I've never been embarrassed or nervous to call them. I've been able to just do it and go, hey, you know what, I'm having some trouble here. And that's something, I think that's something people need. You know, we got to kind of help ourselves by doing those things. And I think it's very hard, but that's something that my message would be is, don't ever be scared to ask somebody, because you know what, the worst answer you're going to get is no. And truth be told, no is just means, hey, no right now, new opportunity. N-O, new opportunity. Mm-hmm. That's what that means. You can shift, you can find a new way. Maybe you find something else. That door might close, but that means the window might be open. Maybe there's another door open in that room. So don't close yourself out to asking people for that help, because you never know where it might lead you.
Yeah, so true. So good. Yeah, and like you had said too about how you love evaluation, right? Like get evaluation from people that you look up to, from people that are in that same space, doing that same stuff. And yeah, like I ask for help all the time. I'll be struggling with something and I'll just reach out to like another fitness coach where I'll be like, hey, how do you navigate this? Have you had this experience, right? And again, a lot of times it can be mutual help, right? Like you might help them in one area, they help you in another area. So it's not like, you know, you don't have to feel like, oh, I just need a need. But there's times in your life where you are going to be more needy. And that's okay. You need more help at times. And I definitely would say that's my message too. It's like, get the help that you need. And it takes that initial, it's like jumping off a cliff, you know, it's like that initial, it's like, oh, it feels so awful. But once you do it once, then it's a little bit easier, and it gets a little bit easier. And then you really get the help that you need. And then all of a sudden you're able to start helping other people too. Right. So it's
totally. I recently went through this exact same thing. So, I mean, I know I'm sitting here and I'm not preaching it either. Like I got to practice what I preach too. And recently I had made the decision I was going to apply for my Canadian Professional Rodeo Association card. I wanted to become an announcer with the CPRA. And there's a process to it. You know, you got to file the paperwork and you got to get it in, and you got to give them some opportunities to come see you, but you also need references. And for me, that's where I was finding my jumping point to be a little difficult, because now these people who I'm super comfortable with, I'm turning to them to go, hey, would you be willing to put your name on a piece of paper to back up my abilities to get my card? And that's where, I was nervous. I remember thinking, like, I talk to Dustin pretty frequently. Obviously, he's quite busy right now with his new adventure park and stuff. But I remember thinking, like, man, this guy's got a whole lot going on. We just talked a couple weeks ago. And I remember thinking it was so hard to send him a message. And I just did it. And same with Brett. I remember texting him. It was during Calgary. And I texted him and never expected him to call back because that guy got 10 minutes. And he, not a problem. And Carrie Crystal, same thing. And she had actually pushed me to in 2019, she had said, hey, look, you should be trying for this. And that's where, as a person who's very hard on themselves, or like a lot of self-reflection, I'm looking at myself like, am I good enough to do this? And these people are coming out, and it wasn't even so much as a question. They sent, it's about time. Let's do it. I have no problem helping you out. Betty Allgate, same thing, a timer out of the South that I've worked with. And these great people that I was so nervous to ask, they did it with, like, they came back with the responses that came back. It kind of makes you go, you know what? I don't know why I would have ever been nervous to do this. Mm-hmm. But you are. I mean, it's just the way it is. We're all going to get nervous in those situations. There's even times like, I'll have an event come up, and I try to work every event that I do. I try to include my wife in making the decision. We're a partnership, and there's times where, like, I'll get a phone call and I'll know that in the back of my mind, like, for instance, we have a wedding on Thanksgiving that we're supposed to be at. And sometimes you miss some of these events for what we do with the rodeo stuff. And I know I have the Chinook finals on. So I had to ask my wife, like, and I remember trying to build up to that even. And I talked to her every single day and going to her and being like, Kaylor, is it okay if I happen to do this? I'll be there on the Sunday. And you know what? It's funny. Like, she's like, yeah, no, not a problem. That's what we're going to do. And it's making those decisions and asking those questions, because it is tough. But that'd be another piece I would say. Say yes to opportunities, because, announcing, reffing, with work, you've got to say yes to opportunities, because it's going to open doors. It's going to give you situations that you can put yourself in to better yourself. But at that same breath, it's having the courage within yourself to ask the questions that can lead to those doors opening and to those yes opportunities. Because if you don't, you end up just sitting at home and stewing on ifs and buts. And a line my grandfather told my dad, and I say it to people all the time: if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, it'd be Christmas every day. So instead of living in the what ifs, take the yes, ask the question, find the fearlessness in you to do it. And that's, kind of the piece that that sits with me every day.
Awesome. That's awesome, Dom. So where do people go to find you if they kind of want to learn more about you?
Well, I'm terrible at social media. I should probably get a whole lot better at it. So I'll call myself out on it on here. I do have a Facebook page. I think it's Dom St Amand Rodeo Announcing. I do have an old Facebook page that is no longer. I got hacked, which is the worst, because I can't get the darn thing down. I'm kind of on Instagram, but yeah, that's the place you can find me, is my Facebook page. It is somewhat tied to my Instagram. I'm still trying to iron those pieces out.
Okay.
So as I evolve in 2021, I should probably evolve my social media, because I'm horrible at social media. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to ask the right questions.
Yeah, maybe I'll hook you up with some social media managers that make
perfect. I'll ask for help here right now. I need the help on my social media. And then yes, they can find me there. I do plenty of events all over Western Canada. Actually, coming up, I'm going to Airdrie on Saturday for a buck and horse futurity, and then at the end of the month, I'm heading to Smithers, BC. So I'm kind of there and everywhere guy. So you can find me on there and keep up with what I'm doing. So
cool. Well, thanks so much, Dom, for being on here. I really appreciated talking to you. And I look forward to probably seeing you down on the trail somewhere at one of these rodeos or events.
Well, you know what? To your opportunity to hopefully come is on the 18th. I know Travis is doing another deal at his house. So I look forward to hopefully seeing you there, because I'll be there for that. I'm booked in for that. So we'll get to catch up there. And maybe you'll even come in time again. Now you'll be an old veteran, know.
I'll do just a bang up job. No, that's good. I look forward to it.
That's good. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Carla. And it was a pleasure being on today.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. I absolutely love that you joined us. I love being able to record these, and I love our guests. It's been so much fun. So thank you. Please like it, share it, comment, do all of the things that you feel like you want to do if you enjoyed this podcast. I really, really appreciate that. And this podcast has been brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. So everything that we do locally with our workouts, with our group nutrition coaching, and with all of the other fun events and stuff that we run, we put all of that online. So now you can access everything, even if you're not locally, don't live in our area. So my coaches and I and all my staff, the whole team,
We are putting so much work into these workouts. We're filming 5 fresh workouts every single week so that you never have to do the same workout twice. We're also doing group nutrition and personal nutrition coaching so that you get exactly what you need. And you know what the best part is? It's the community. The absolute best part is just knowing that you have the support, that you have the encouragement, that you have everything you need to succeed. So go to powerfitnessonline.com.